So my name is Dan May. I'm the commercial director here at Ramsack, and it's a very, very great pleasure to welcome friends old and new this morning. Some of you are seasoned regulars at our regular events and webinars, and some of you I see on the list are joining us for the first time. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, Ramsack is an IT service provider. We work largely in the SME space, helping organisations to manage and evolve their use of technology. We run these events every few weeks, looking at a range of different tech issues and how they're impacting on the world of business and charities that we work with. So a little bit of background before I introduce today's speakers. We're going to take about an hour of your time. We aim to finish at 11:30 this morning. And the reason we've done a number of webinars over the last few months around COVID, around lockdown, around remote working, around the return to office, and we've covered a number of different topics. And I know other organisations are doing sort of similar things, but this subject matter is something I've not seen talked about that much. But those of you that have started to come back into your offices on a sort of perhaps a percentage basis will probably have experienced the challenge that is quite unique post-lockdown. A year ago, we all shifted to working from home, and we all shifted to meetings on Teams. Some people used Zoom, but I'm not supposed to say that when I've got Mo on the line. But we all shifted to video-based meetings, and for the last year, that's worked pretty well. Most of us have been working from our home offices or home bedrooms or whatever it is that wherever it is we've been working from, and we've been working on a kind of a one-to-one basis with our laptop, where we've got our own set of speakers, maybe a headset, we've got our own camera in front of us. Everybody that we speak to has agreed or has told us so far that their plan when they come back to the office, if they haven't already done so, is not to come back 5 days a week. The world of hybrid working seems to be here to stay. Most organisations that we're working with are saying that their plan is staff will come in for 2 or 3 days a week in the office, and they'll work 2 or 3 days at home, because everyone's realised the various benefits of remote working. But that has really, really changed the experience in the meeting room. Hybrid meetings are different to what we've been doing for the last year. For the last year, we've all been dialing in from our home offices, and that's worked quite well. But now we're in a situation where you go into a meeting and 4 or 5 people are sat around a table, and then 4 or 5 further candidates are dialing in, are dialing in from remote locations. And that, I think, is the future. But the experience is not brilliant in a lot of cases. Most organisations have really underinvested in their audio-visual setup, in their meeting rooms. And what we're ending up with is a 2-tier meeting experience, where the people sat around the table get a really different experience to those people that are remotely joining the conference. And we've got to look at the technology that enables us to make sure a real equal experience for both in-room and out-of-room participants, and that enables us to address the challenge of what happens now I suddenly jump on a Teams call, though I work in the middle of an open plan office. What does that mean for my meeting requirements and perhaps my need for sort of huddle space technology? And how do we ensure that we don't spend the first 12 minutes of every meeting with people struggling to work out how on earth they connect their laptop to that meeting room display in the first place? And I'm sure we've all been there in that really awkward meeting. So we put today's webinar on to look at what are we seeing in the trends of meeting requirements, and how can physical technology ensure an equality of experience between in-room and out-of-room participants. And I feel personally quite passionate about this, actually. I think that for many years, most of our visitors' first experience of our own brand, of our own building, has been the experience they've got when they've walked through our front door. And organisations have spent tens of thousands of pounds making sure that their reception is kitted out to represent the quality of their own brand. But actually, increasingly, people will be arriving in your business for the first time via your conference room, and the experience they get when they dial into your conference room and they can't see all of the people sat around the table, and they can't see or hear effectively the person speaking, will really impact on people's impression. And I think increasingly over the next year or so, that kind of digital presence and that experience of that digital meeting is going to be really significant in people's kind of view of your brand. So without further ado, we're joined by two external guests today. So first of all, Mohammed Khalifa. Mo is a partner technical specialist at Microsoft UK. He works across the EMEA region and is an expert on the Microsoft Teams Room technology suite. So Mo, absolutely fantastic to welcome you today. And we're also joined by Tom Ballard. Tom is the business development manager for Microsoft Teams for Meetings at Maverick, and Maverick are Ramsak's distribution partner for all things audio visual. Delighted that you could both join us today, Mo and Tom. We're going to hear from Mo first. Before we do, if you've got questions as we go along, please use the chat box, and I'll keep an eye on the chat box and either make sure we round back to questions at the end, or I think if we need to interrupt the speakers mid-flow and ask them a question, then we'll do that as well. We will try and allow a few minutes at the end for any questions, and you'll have access to the chat window after the call has ended as well. Yeah, if we use that chat window to pose any questions or thoughts as we go along, we definitely welcome your participation in that. So without further ado, Mo, I'm going to hand over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan, and thank you all for giving me the opportunity to join you guys this wonderful morning. If you give me a couple of seconds, I'm going to go ahead and just share my presentation. There we go. And Dan, if you can give me a thumbs up if everyone can see that. Super. Okay, so we'll get cracking, and I'll start off by introducing myself. So my name is Mo. I am the partner technical specialist for Microsoft Teams Rooms devices covering the EMEA region. And what I'd love to do today is spend roughly around 30 minutes just really articulating some of the insights and some of the trends we've seen over the last kind of year and a half in this new way of working, in this new world we're living in, and how technology is really impacting us moving forwards, and you know, really talking about kind of some of the thought leadership conversations that we need to have, you know, with our peers, with our team members, on what is the best way to get back to work safely. As we all know, COVID is pretty much here to stay. You know, it's become the norm now. It was quite weird last week. I went out on a customer visit for the first time, which I used to do day in, day out a couple of years ago, and it was so surreal and so strange. And you know, getting onto the tube with other people there, and it's like, ooh, you know, you want to keep your distance. So it's this new kind of world we're living in. And what I'd like to do across on this slide is really just take you back to the beginning of March, when COVID first kicked in. So when Boris Johnson and the UK started looking at COVID more seriously at the beginning of March, we were tracking at roughly around 560 million meeting minutes being used across the Teams platform. And what that means is, what we do is we track more than two people jumping onto a call, whether it's on a laptop, a mobile phone, a tablet, etc. And it was good, it was average, it was not too bad. But as we got into this notion that, we're going to have to start working from home and we're going to be placed under a national lockdown, etc., we were scrambling around trying to grab hold of laptops and webcams. And I'm sure you guys will remember, you know, the panic and you know, the craziness that surrounding us during that first week in March when we were trying to get people set up. We jumped very quickly to 900 million meeting minutes being used every single day across the Teams platform, as people really started to look for the correct platform to be able to stay connected with their colleagues. Now, of course, as Dan alluded to, there are other VC solutions out there. We absolutely know that. But a lot of our customers wanted much more than just video conferencing. They wanted the ability to collaborate and co-author with others and have one app, one place to be able to access all of their content and stay connected with all their colleagues worldwide. as we really got used to working from home, by the end of the month, we jumped up to 2.7 billion meeting minutes being used. That's what we were tracking per day. And in fact, that number today is probably closer to 5 billion meeting minutes being used, as organizations started to work out that Teams was their go-to platform of choice, because it was much more than just chat and meetings and IM. It was that collaboration platform that we had. And what's quite funny is this is technology that has been around for quite a number of years. And, you know, a little joke that we always have is the great British public we hate change. Anything changes, we have a massive uproar about it. We'll riot, we'll do all sorts of craziness. But actually, a lot of organizations who were thinking of deploying Teams over the next 12 months deployed them over a weekend with very minimal issues. And the great British public we got on with it. We had bigger things to worry about. We got on with it. We embraced it. We started using it, and we continue to use it today as well. Of course, as part of that, we've seen a huge increase in video being switched on. Now it's the norm, and it was great to see all of you guys when you were joining. Everyone is switching on video, and Dan there trying to turn video off. But it's amazing to see how many people are now switching over to video. And it really brings the human element out of us, because we're not able to be physically there. Where we now want to be able to see human emotion. We want to see people's reactions when we're talking to them. And it's the norm now to have video switched on, whereas 12 months ago, 13 months ago, it was a challenge to get anybody on video because we were so sick of seeing people all the time. And this makes it even more important for us to look at our return to work strategies and think about how organizations are now moving towards this new hybrid way of working. We saw it happen, and some of these trends happen out of lockdown 1.0. So if you remember, back end of last year, we started coming out of a lockdown before we were promptly put back into it. But as we were preparing and moving back into this freedom, if you want to call it that, organizations were thinking about, well, how do we keep people connected? Because the trends that we saw was pretty much 25% of the workforce would return back into work for a few days, maybe a couple of weeks. 75% of the workforce will still be working remotely. And they would then switch over after a couple of weeks or after a couple of days with another 25%. And that means it becomes even more important to ensure that those shared spaces that we have in our workplace are enabled correctly to stay connected with that 75% of the workforce that's still out there. Now, as we start getting closer and closer to Freedom Day, as it's now known, and I know we've had the 4-week extension added for us, but now we're looking at, the trends that we're seeing is organizations have worked out that we don't need to have 500 people in a building to keep our business ticking over. We're able to work effectively. Travel and expense budgets have been cut dramatically, and money invested in AV solutions and things like that. And people don't want to come back to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, staying in the same place. I can't imagine a world of us doing that anymore. And a lot of organizations tend to agree. So we're looking at creating spaces and areas. And again, as we start looking at our digital transformation strategies and our return to work strategies, how do we create effective spaces? And here at Microsoft, we did a whole bunch of market research to really help support the theories that we're looking at and helping our customers with. And I'm sure you'll agree, back-to-back meetings, webinar meetings, back-to-back meetings really take it out of you. I feel I work a lot more harder now than I ever did before, although I also feel I'm more effective and I get more done in the smaller amount of time. In my previous, I was going to say previous role, it's the same role, but back in normal days, I'd be traveling up and down the country, usually, every single day. And I'd have 2 or 3 hours to myself to kind of wind down, cool down, listen to, whatever music I've got in my car before hitting my next meeting. But I'd probably get less done because most of my time was spent traveling. Whereas now with back-to-back meetings, I tend to get more done. But the fatigue levels really start going up dramatically. I've got to that point where now I have to book toilet breaks. I have to actually book them in my diary and book lunch breaks, or people will just see my diary and book them out. And I'm sure it's the same with many of us here on the call today. We were tracking a whole bunch of things when it comes to kind of brain fatigue, etc. And when we have multiple videos all happening at the same time, the fatigue level really start increasing. So here at Microsoft, when we were creating new solutions and new upgrades to the Teams platform and new devices for that matter, we really took this scientific research and then applied it into things that would actually make a difference to our well-being and not just copy what everybody else was doing out there. Features such as the ones that you see here on screen today. So I'm just going to bring out my laser pointer. There we go. So down here at the bottom right-hand corner, we now have enabled a feature called Together Mode, and maybe we can try it at the end of the call when everyone's video switched back on again, where we use Microsoft AI technology and effectively cuts out your image and sticks you into a virtual room. And that way there's less flicking of the eyeballs, thus reducing the stress levels and the fatigue levels on the brain. And of course, this feature is now available inside of meeting rooms as well. Here on the left-hand side, we have what we call background blur and virtual backgrounds, which has been an absolute lifesaver. It's quite the norm now to have your partner run across, excuse me, your partner run across in their bathrobe, your dog's jumping on your lap. You know, my kids know exactly when I'm on a Teams call and they can hear it. And that's the point. They come in and ask me, Daddy, can I have a bar of chocolate? And they know they're not supposed to have that, but they know I'm panicking and I'm going to say yes. But bringing things like background blur and virtual background, you know, really helps keep us at ease and kind of hide the mess that we may have at our behind us. Also, the flip side is brand awareness as well. A lot of organizations create virtual backgrounds with their logos on there. You know, I've got one on right now which kind of reflects Microsoft Teams rooms. So it's been a great feature which now, you know, is the norm. Of course, here in the top left-hand corner, we've also added the ability for organizations to inject applications within the Teams platform. And this application here is what we call Reflect. And Reflect enables organizations to be able to send out surveys to all of their employees on a weekly basis, where we get to check to see, or the organization can check to see, how are you feeling? You know, are you feeling stressed? Are you okay? Are you not? Because we're not physically there to be able to manage and monitor that. And this way, we're able to capture how people are feeling with COVID, and you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's been done around mental awareness, especially with COVID-19 and the stresses that brings. And you know, having apps like this really enable organizations to be able to track and then implement the correct kind of workplace or well-being activities to you know, for their staff members. What we also did is, you know, we kind of did some market research and found the complete opposite in terms of some of the positive feedback that we had. We found Generation Z and millennials really seem to struggle with keeping that work-life balance. For most of us, you know, if you're as old as me, we're used to this 9 to 5, and then, you know, as soon as you get home, that's it, work's finished, and you go out and you party. Unfortunately, the youngsters can't go out and party, you know, with the lockdown going on. And Teams as a platform is, as great as it is, keeps you connected with everyone 24/7 across multiple platforms. At what point do you switch off? At what point do you stop doing work? And that has been a challenge, and a new challenge that a lot of organizations have to now weave into kind of their planning when we look at these working from home bundles that we're putting together. Of course, we're seeing the flip side as well. Working from home drives a lot of empathy. It's now the norm for me to say, guys, excuse me, the doorbell's just gone off. I need to grab my shopping. You know, that's the norm now. And we kind of just get on with it. Whereas 12 months ago, I'd be red-faced. I'd be like, God, this is, you know, I'd sacrifice my shopping just to kind of remain and look professional on a call. Taking all of these pieces of feedback and studies that Microsoft's done, we work very closely with our partners, not just internally here at Microsoft, but also our external partners, to create the correct products based on the market research we are bringing. For example, this device here that you see on screen is what we call a Lenovo Think Smart View. And this device here is a sub £300 device. It sits on your desk. It's about an alarm clock size. It's got a camera just across here with a privacy shutter, microphone, speaker, and it runs the Teams platform. And the idea around this is many organizations, including what we're doing here today, is we're looking at that return to work strategy. But what we should also be taking into account is our working from home strategy to go along with it as well, because we know we're not going to have people in the office 24/7. And working from home, usually the bundles that many organizations put together is, hey, we're going to give you a laptop, a docking station, a webcam, maybe a headset. And if you're lucky, you may get a chair to go along with it as well. But have we looked at the technology? And this device here is Teams on board. You sign into it. It's designed to be a companion for Teams. So it gives you access to, it gives you like a ticker feed where it gives you all your notifications. I've got one here at my desk with me as well. I can, join meetings directly on it because it's got the speaker mic and camera on there. I can access my chat. I can see my calendar without the need of me having to flick over different windows and stuff. And even the ability for it to stay connected into your cloud storage. I had an instance over Christmas where my laptop just completely died on me. And every time I join a Teams call, the whole Teams, my laptop would just freeze and crash. And, all of a sudden, if I'm delivering a webinar, such as what I'm doing today, panic mode kicks in. But I was okay because I had the Think Smart view and I had my PowerPoint presentations saved in the Office 365 network. Within a matter of seconds, I was able to hit the join call and then continue on my Think Smart view device. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, as we look at returning to work, don't forget, moving forwards, we still are looking at working from home as well. And chances are the place that you're sitting right now, if you're not at work and you're sitting at home, your home office is probably the new huddle space of your work. It's an extension of your workplace. So do take into account, there's Tom later on will come in and talk about some different products that we have, but do take into account, not only are we looking at meeting spaces, but that 75% of the workforce that will probably still be working from home at that point. How do we ensure that they have the correct technology at a cheap price point, which enables them in a very simple manner to stay connected with everybody else? Now, this slide here is a really interesting one. We really looked at the three trends that we're seeing as we start returning to work. The beginning of last year, we were at this respond phase. How do we change rapidly to stay in business? We were in panic mode, to be more realistic. We get people with laptops, get them home, etc. We were really responding very quickly to what was going on. We've been very reactive across there. And then as we got used to this notion of working from home, we were in what we call recover phase. So, bringing in the correct devices, starting to plan ahead. We had these couple of fake coming out of lockdown moments that we thought we were going to happen and never did happen. And we really started looking at, well, what is our strategy for the immediate future? Are we expecting to keep all of our buildings open, across the UK and across EMEA? A lot of organizations have been downsizing. There's no need to have 7 buildings anymore. We'll stick with 3. And Microsoft's done exactly the same with our campus at Thames Valley Park in Reading. But where we are right now for most of us is we're kind of in this between mode of recover and reimagine. How do we gear ourselves for the new world of work? So some of us are still recovering, but predominantly we're coming onto this reimagine mode. And that's where partners such as Ramsack and Tech Data Maverick can absolutely help support with the vision in terms of looking at, one, infrastructure. Are we kitted up? We've done Microsoft Teams, we've got Office 365. And then what are the endpoints? How do we ensure that we create an experience which is very simple for our employees to be able to just really adapt to? So when we walk into work and we see the equipment into there, it's the same GUI, the same experience as we're used to using on our home that we've been doing for the last year. And when we take into account, normally when we deploy new products into a workplace, we look at user adoption. We're going to have to train people on how to use it. The advantage around this is there's very little user adoption because we use the same icons, the same experiences, and I'll show you a little video in a second in terms of what that looks like. As we are looking at this reimagine phase, what's really important is looking at, well, how are we conducting meetings and how have we traditionally conducted meetings? This particular slide that you see up here was actually put together before COVID was even a thing. And what Microsoft wanted to do is we wanted to identify the types of meetings that take place, but also the headaches that we get with the meetings that go along with it. And Dan mentioned it a little earlier on. One of the biggest things we found, on average, it would take anything between 12 and 14 minutes to get a meeting started, purely because we had the wrong equipment there. We didn't have the correct adapters, or the facilities guy never turned on the power switch, which is what I found last week when I went out to visit my customers, to turn on the AV equipment inside of the room. All of these little things, there's an echo going on the mic, really cut into our 30-minute meeting time that we had across there. Where we found the most value is actually identifying the types of meetings that take place. And you'll see here on the pie chart, 27% of meetings were what we would class as status type meetings. We've renamed that to meet and present. And what a status type of meeting is very similar to what we're doing today. I present to you, or you present to me. We have a bit of a conversation. That's pretty much the end of the meeting. Most meetings were kind of in that flow, 27% prior to COVID coming in. Of course, those numbers have jumped up significantly as well. 22% of meetings were collaborative in nature. And that's where you would have 3 or 4 people inside of the same room working on a single canvas, a single document, pulling ideas together to actually yield results at the end of it. Of course, these numbers have jumped up significantly since COVID has become a thing, but it becomes really important for us as organizations that not only do we look at how many meeting rooms we have and what areas they're in, and 99% of the time, hopefully Dan will agree with me here, 99% of the time, most of our customers will come up to us and say, hey, Dan, we've got 15 meeting rooms spread across 3 different locations. Please quote me with some AV equipment. That's usually the information we get. But actually, what I'd really ask you guys to start thinking about and weaving into your digital transformation strategies and return to work strategies is not only think about the number of meeting rooms you have, but start thinking about meeting room personas. What types of meetings take place in those meeting spaces, or what behaviors are you trying to drive? Now that we're using Teams as a platform, and a lot of our customers, a lot of our employees are now using it purely for collaboration as well, creating teams, creating channels, collaborating with each other. Are you driving collaboration more, or are you driving status meetings? And there's never going to be one or the other. It's always going to be a mix. So when you look at the spaces that you have within an organization, especially when you're looking at things like the learning and development department, the engineering departments, those sort of places where they conceive ideas and build products and stuff, that's probably going to be a collaborative space. Whereas maybe the chief exec's office is probably going to be a status or a meet and present type meeting, because generally they get presented to or present to others. And that's usually going to be the case across there. So really, I would encourage you to start thinking not only about the amount of meeting rooms that you have, but the meeting room personas, because we have different products to suit different needs. Now let's go in and do a bit of an introduction to Microsoft Teams Rooms devices. I'm going to run you a quick 30-40 second video just to give you a brief intro, and then I'll move into a bit more detail. Two seconds, guys, while I go ahead and hit. I've got to get rid of my laser pointer. Rid of that. There we go.
A Teams room is designed to give all meeting participants an inclusive and reliable experience. Cameras can frame the room and zoom into the active speaker, and audio devices are designed to ensure that people's voices are clear and intelligible. Now, wherever you're joining from, you can raise your hand to indicate you'd like to speak, or follow along with real-time AI-enabled live captions. And with the trend for remote work accelerating over the years, we've made video core to the meeting experience, which we've all recently learned firsthand is vital for human connection and inclusivity.
There is a longer version of the video, of course.
A Teams room is designed to
just move that. We can send some links out to some of our YouTube channels where you can go into a lot more in depth. It's like a 15-minute video that goes into a more detail. But I did want to quickly just pop that across just to show you the basics of a Teams meeting room. So what is a Teams meeting room device, or a Microsoft Teams Rooms device? These are purpose-built devices designed for the meeting room space. It's very easy for our customers to kind of bulk together a meeting room by grabbing hold of a laptop or a tablet, not a tablet, a laptop or a workstation, sticking Windows on it, sticking the Windows version of Teams, plugging it into a camera and a screen, and hey presto, we've got a meeting room space. Does it work? Short term, yes, absolutely. Is it long term? Absolutely not. No. Remember, the term PC by definition means personal computer. It's designed for one person, not designed for groups of people to use. So very quickly, what you'll find is you'll have security implications happening, because people may go onto websites that download applications and not sign out of accounts and things. So you've got security risks going there. Because those devices are not designed for groups of people, the cache really starts building up and things really start slowing down. I know firsthand. I used to sell these before I joined Microsoft. Selling them's the easy part. 3 months later, you'll get the complaint saying, oh, this thing's not working, it's slowing down. And that was purely because they're not designed for groups of people. Whereas this device here, Microsoft Teams Rooms device, is designed for groups of people. It's modular by design, which means you can add all manner of cameras, mics, and speakers based on the room size, the acoustics, the lighting, etc. The screen that you see, and I'll get my laser pointer out again, the screen that you see on across here is the default kind of Microsoft Teams Rooms mode. And effectively what happens is when this mode is running, it puts the device into like a lockdown mode or kiosk mode. So when you get a user walking into the room, that's the screen they see. No matter how many times you reboot the machine, it will always stay at this screen. It's very secure as well. So effectively, there's two major components when it comes to a Microsoft Teams Rooms device. The first component is the touch controller, which is the screen that sits in the middle of the table to control the call. And the second part is the compute, the part of the device that powers the Teams Rooms. And in this case, we've got an all-in-one, and you'll see that a little later on. In other cases, you can have a separate type of PC, which is hidden away in a ceiling, behind a screen, etc. But that compute device effectively runs Windows 10 IoT. We then put the MTR image on top, which is the image you see on screen. And when that image is running, it effectively locks down the machine. It gets to the point where it stops read-write access. It stops command prompts. It stops command executables from running. So it's very secure. Viruses can't run on the machine itself. It even has its own inbuilt maintenance script. So if you plugged it in and you set it up, you don't have to do anything. You can set it and forget it. Effectively, what would happen is around 2 a.m. every morning, it would go online and download only the relevant updates for that machine. It will not download anything else, only the updates that Microsoft and our team have authorized to say, yes, these have been tested, they work, they're security updates or app updates, and we'll push those updates, we'll install them, and around 2:30 a.m. every morning, we'll reboot the machine for you. So every day when you walk in, and the next working day, you always have a fresh build of the machine working with the latest security updates and everything up to date. When we work with our OEM partners, our manufacturers, to create these devices, we give them a whole list of things that these devices must have. Things ranging from a TPM chip for security, all the way down to cable management. How easy is it for the cable to be pulled out the back if your foot hit against, one of the cable runs under the table, if it wasn't installed properly, of course. And only if do they satisfy every single one of those needs do we then certify them to be a Microsoft Teams certified device. And it's really important that when you are looking for devices, that you pick the certified for Microsoft Teams badge to go along with it. And of course, speak with our colleagues here at Ramsack and of course Tech Data Maverick as well for support. And they can talk you through exactly which products are certified for Microsoft Teams Rooms. Now, when we look at the types of devices that we have in a meeting room space, there's three major devices Microsoft recommend in a meeting room space based on meeting room personas. So going back to the original slide with the pie chart. The first one I'll start here on the right-hand side is, of course, the Microsoft Surface Hub 2S. Hopefully you've heard about that one before. It's an all-in-one collaborative device. It's this version you see on screen is a 50.5-inch version. There is an 86-inch version as well. But this 50.5-inch version has a camera in there. It's got mics, it's got speakers. You can even attach a battery to the tray to make it truly mobile. And it has access to first-party and third-party applications like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. It's also got best-in-class Microsoft Whiteboard. So the very best of the Microsoft Whiteboard runs on this device for collaboration with AI technology and creating shapes and lifting images of different sites to put them onto a whiteboard. It isn't the cheapest device, I will admit. However, you will be very lucky to find a device that comes as close to this device in terms of security, in terms of fluidity, and how the device works. And it's very, very secure. Here in the middle, we've got a new range of devices called Microsoft Teams Rooms on Android. And the easiest way to explain this is think about your sound bar you may have at home under your TV. Add a camera to it, add a mic and of course speakers. And what we do is we have Android and we put the MTR image on top. And that Android is again very secure and very locked out. So what we do is user does not have access to the Android environment bar the settings, and we take out all the fluff of Android. Anything that's not required is taken out, and it's a very, very secure device. And we've got security white papers to support this as well. These devices, the Android devices, are designed for the smaller space. They're designed for kind of the huddle spaces and predominantly designed for meet and present type scenarios, as opposed to collaborative type scenarios. And they're very easy to install. Single HDMI cable, single power cable, and pretty much you're good to go. And then, of course, we have the staple of all meeting rooms here on the left-hand side, which is Microsoft Teams Rooms on Windows. And as mentioned before, these are modular by design. All manner of cameras, mics, and speakers can plugged into it. And they also work in conjunction with collaboration. So you can invoke a Microsoft whiteboard on that and really go ahead and collaborate with others. And they're designed to work with each other. So across your estate, when you start looking at all different size rooms and different meeting room personas, you can choose to have potentially a Surface Hub in a collaborative area. In the chief exec's room, you could potentially have something like an Android device. And then in most traditional meeting rooms, you can have the Windows devices. And Tom's going to come in a little later and break it all down on a single page to kind of recommend the types of devices based on meeting room personas. But of course, it's not just about the hardware. It's also about the experiences. And one of our mantras is really making Microsoft Teams Rooms devices people-centric meeting experiences. Whether you're working physically inside of a meeting room space or joining in virtually, we want all participants to feel included and inclusive as part of that meeting, wherever they may be, joining in remotely or actually physically in the room. And we've added a whole bunch of different features that were driven out of COVID-19. To really help with this. For example, proximity beaconing is a feature we have across the Microsoft Teams Rooms devices, where you could effectively use your mobile phone, your laptop, your tablet to find a nearby room, a Microsoft Teams Rooms that's not being used, and actually transfer your call directly into the room with zero touch. So you use your mobile phone or you use your tablet, and you just, while you're on a call or before a call, you just say, oh, look, there's a room nearby, transfer the call to the room, and everything just lights up for you. Predominantly, that was used for user adoption to get people to use rooms that weren't being used. But now it's being used more for COVID-19 measures, where people don't want to physically be touching public surfaces in the room. So instead, they dial from their own device and then just join the room into it. And it's intelligent enough to mute your device as well, so there's no interference. It's a very simple process. And of course, we can move into more detail in subsequent sessions after this. If you did want to learn a bit more about this, please do speak with Dan at Ramsack for that. Foster interactive and inclusive meetings. For example, we've added a great feature here, which is what we call intelligent content capture. So it's a fusion of old school and new school technology. So of course, the Microsoft Teams Rooms device can work with Microsoft Whiteboard. But let's imagine you've got a room with a traditional whiteboard, like an old school dry white marker whiteboard. We've got cameras that can point at the whiteboards and actually digitize the writing as somebody is writing on that whiteboard from analog into digital. And it's intelligent enough that if you stand in front of the whiteboard, the camera kind of sees through you and projects the writing on the back. It's really cool. It's a surreal experience. Again, highly recommended. Have a look on YouTube. There's a few videos that we've got called Intelligent Content Capture, which works in conjunction with Microsoft Teams Rooms devices, really that fusion of old school and new school technology. And then when we look at collaboration, what we normally recommend is when a customer purchases a Microsoft Teams Rooms device, usually you'd purchase a screen to go along with it. The upgrade of having a screen is by having two screens. If you've got two screens, you get better front of room layout, so you can have content on one side and video on the other. The upgrade of having two screens is by changing one of the screens to a touch screen. Now, if you have a touch screen and you've got whiteboard enabled within your organization, somebody in the meeting, while you've joined the meeting, can invoke the Microsoft Whiteboard, and you can actually get up on that touch screen and use a stylus and actually join in with collaboration. So it's a great feature. A lot of our customers will actually just, even in the single display rooms, will just have a touch screen in there and future-proof themselves. So again, that's a consideration. And of course, in medium to large meeting rooms, we've added a new feature called coordinated meetings, where Microsoft Teams Rooms works hand in hand with the Surface Hub. And remember, Surface Hub is great for collaboration. So the example here is a user can walk into a room, see the Microsoft Teams Rooms device on the table, simply hit join to join the meeting, and the Microsoft Teams Rooms knows that there's a Surface Hub in the room, automatically dials the hub into the room, mutes the cameras, mics, and speakers, and kicks off the Microsoft Whiteboard, ready for collaboration. The Surface Hub knows, hey, the Microsoft Teams Rooms is better at audio video, so I'll let the MTR handle the audio video, and I'll handle collaboration. So it's a very seamless experience with one single touch. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to pass you over to my colleague, Tom Ballard from Tech Data, who's going to move into a bit more detail around bringing all of this together in different meeting room spaces and really looking at what the typical kind of day would look like by using Microsoft Teams Rooms devices. Tom, I've just allowed access to you, mate, and over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So yeah, as Mo said, I'm going to quickly just touch on essentially bringing the products to life and kind of how they all fit together, the different options that there are. I know Mo's briefly touched on it, but trying to go into a little bit more detail. Not technical, don't worry, just kind of highlight an overview of what those different products look like. So yeah, this is like a real high-level overview of how all the products kind of fit together based on kind of what size room it's going into. So here were the Microsoft Teams rooms on Android devices that I was talking about. As Mo said, they're very much focused around kind of the huddle space, the focus rooms, kind of open spaces. And then as we come into a more modular type solution, which is purely based on obviously the different types of room sizes. As I said, you can have up to 7 microphones, I believe it is, multiple cameras. This is purely obviously dependent on the size of the room that it's going into. And I said, this kind of layer here, as you can see, is very much focused around that meet and present. So, as Mo alluded to, and I just mentioned just back then, was, when you're going through your digital transformation, you're looking at your current meeting rooms, really think about what type of meetings are going to be hosted in those types of rooms, because that will obviously depend on what type of kit you need in each room. Then obviously the meet and co-create type of solution, which is, again, as Mo alluded to, was the real interactive sessions. If everyone's working on the same document, then that whiteboard feature really gives access to everyone to have their input on that particular document, and really create that collaborative style of meeting. And then to really get kind of the full product or the full version of Microsoft Teams and putting it all together is where coordinated meetings really come into their own. And some of you may have experienced it already, but if you've only got one display in your meeting room and you start sharing a document, I know Microsoft Teams is just updated so you can see people down the side, but to try and make meetings as inclusive as possible, if you have that dual screen element, then you can still see the people that have joined remotely on one screen, and then you have the document that you're sharing on another screen. Again, it's really trying to make it as inclusive and interactive as possible, because the likelihood is, I think it's a stat around 56% of meetings moving forward are going to include someone joining remotely. So how can we make them feel as much a part of the meeting as the people in the room? Then just going to go on to this next slide, which it is slightly similar, but there's a slightly different message behind this. And the reason for this slide is, the great thing about Teams is, no matter whether you're on your laptop, whether you're in a small huddle space or you're in a large exec room, it's that same experience, one touch join throughout the whole spectrum. It's a great thing that Microsoft have really, nailed, I believe, is that, trying to make it as simple as possible, no matter your technical ability. I'm sure we've all been there, a couple of years ago when you go into a meeting room with video conferencing in, you'd have a remote that you'd have to find, you'd spend the first 10 minutes trying to work out how to turn it on, end up calling IT. And as Dan said right at the beginning, it's, how do we stop wasting those initial 10, 15 minutes just trying to get the meeting set up? And that's where Microsoft really comes into its own with the one-touch join, again, regardless of what type of room, what type of solution that you've got. So now I'm just going to take you through, it's basically a quick day in the life that we've created here in Maverick, really trying to put it into perspective of how all the different features around Microsoft Teams rooms kind of pull together and work together. You'll see here, many of you may have seen these before outside of meeting rooms, but these are your sort of meeting room panels that sit on the outside. Again, giving that indication of whether that room's available. Comes up with your meetings that are booked obviously throughout the day. I think eventually, I know there's an update coming, but you'll be able to also see how many people are in that room. So something that some of the MTR products have is that they have people counting enabled. And the reason why this is pretty critical, because one, obviously we're just coming out of COVID. So, if you've got restrictions in place where you can only have a certain amount of people in that particular room to make it COVID safe, then you'll get a warning to say if there's too many people. But also from a facilities point of view, if you've created a meeting room environment that's, let's say, built for 10 people, but you can see, and this is where the analytics side of it really come into its own, but you'll be able to see exactly how many people are using that meeting room on average. So if you've only got 3 or 4 people using that meeting room at any one time, then do we need to review that particular meeting room? Do we need to change how it's being used? change what products are in there to, you know, really make it come into its own. And then, as Mo showed you briefly, this is obviously the central console that you can see on this desk in front of you. Again, creating that one-touch join. This is also where proximity join comes in as part of this story on here, which I know Mo mentioned about. You know, if you're walking into that meeting room where you're on a Teams call on your phone, the Bluetooth sensor will pick it up and it'll ask you if you want to transfer it over to that particular meeting room. So as we move into kind of a different scenario, this is where Lucas is working at his desk, and this is where the Lenovo Think Smart View again comes into its own. It's something I use as well. I know Mo swears by it, but the great thing about these systems is, you know, you can join a call whilst on the Lenovo Think Smart View, and then you've still got full access to your laptop. You know, you're not flicking between screens. Depending on obviously what you're trying to share, you're still able to work whilst you're on the calls. And then there's also, just to highlight here, is that Microsoft do have multiple different certified devices, and you know, the reason we recommend these certified devices is because they are built purely for Microsoft Teams, so they will enable you to have all the features accessible for that particular environment. So here's a slightly different scenario. So this is again where Mo was talking about the kind of the coordinated meetings, and as you can see here, whilst we're still sharing a document, we can still see people that are in the meeting room, making it as inclusive as possible, making people feel like they are in that meeting room, yet they're still able to work on that particular document that they're all working on. And this particular device here is a Surface Hub. There are, as Mo said, there are the other options you've got. You've also got obviously the content cameras that you can use. There are Windows collaboration displays that you can use, which I believe is on the next slide. But they all create that kind of collaborative, interactive type of meeting. So this is where, I'll just skip back. This is where this particular device here is a Windows collaboration display. So what you can see here is, again, it's like an alternative to the Surface Hub. Obviously, it doesn't have quite the same features as the Surface Hub. You know, the Surface Hub is really in a world of its own. But again, gives you that same interactive, collaborative style of meeting. And then one thing you can do here, oh, sorry, I wasn't supposed to do that. One thing you can do here is, with some of the devices, you can have, they call it the Logitech switch. So whilst you might have chosen to go with Microsoft Teams rooms, if you've got customers coming into that room that potentially might use a different platform, they can connect to USB switching by USB-C that will literally take over that particular meeting room and allow them to, you know, if they're using Zoom or another platform, they're able to, you know, take control of that using their laptop. And then once you unplug it, it just reboots and then it's back to a Microsoft Teams room. So here's kind of like an auditorium style of meeting room, and this is where Teams live events are being used. This obviously allows people to join remotely. We have Surface Hub over here for, again, using the whiteboard features. But again, this is really just reiterating that, you know, no matter what size of room this is going into, we have the products, the modular products that will really allow you to expand as large a room as you like. And in this one, so as you can see here, this is on the Android devices for all the Microsoft Teams rooms for Android. You have a USB coming out into the particular laptop, allowing you to share content. So this is obviously aimed at your much more kind of focus room, huddle space. Again, just another option of, as I showed you on the devices slide, another option that you can use, or where Microsoft Teams rooms really can come into its own. A lot of or certainly what we're looking to do at Tech Data, Maverick, is, you know, all your focus work is going to be done at home, and then when you're in the office, it's very much your collaborative style meetings that you're coming in for. And again, this is creating these huddle spaces, huddle environments, and meeting room environments to enable employees to be able to do that. And then this is quite a cool feature on the Surface Hub. So in case that any of you don't know, the Surface Hub can be put onto a trolley. This is actually an APC battery in the bottom here, and it becomes a fully remote solution. So it's something you can wheel around the office, move into different huddle spaces or open spaces, and again, be able to carry on that meeting, again, wherever you are. I said it's got the battery that allows you to be fully remote, fully flexible in terms of where you're having that meeting. And then just lastly, again, this is a kind of reiterate the seamless switching that you have on Microsoft Teams. So as you're leaving a particular meeting at the end of the day, onto your phone and then switching over to your car. Seamless switching allows you to have, a millisecond split. There is no drop off, anything like that. Again, it allows you to carry on that meeting on the go, creating that flexible hybrid working environment. So I believe that is it from me. I'll pass now back to Dan just to kind of wrap up. Any questions you've got, please feel free to reach out to myself or Mo. We'll be more than happy to help.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mo. It's a whirlwind of product information there, but just to summarise some of what we've heard about today, I think really the message from us is that in some ways the technology has become so much easier. I think we've all become experts at using Teams on our laptops, and I think in some regards the ability to have really good audio visual solutions in different scenarios across your office has become, as I say, in some respects so much easier than ever before, but the consideration for that meeting room hardware has really changed. And I think pre-COVID, a lot of the SME organizations that we worked with would make do with the sort of the 70 quid Logitech camera perched on top of a flat screen monitor at the top of a room and trail a USB cable across the desk. And I think hopefully what we've done by Mo and Tom today is present to you that really the consideration has to change, and we have to be thinking about making sure that the real estate that we've got in our businesses is being really used to maximum efficiency, and that the meeting room experience, whether I'm in the office, whether I'm at home, is the same. I can still collaborate, I can still interact, and when I join that meeting room, I can hear everybody around the table because proper thought and consideration has been put into where the camera sits, how many cameras there are, how many displays that room needs, where the microphones sit around the room. And we can help you with all of that. So at the end of the call, we will share a link. We've put together a sort of a very simple guide with some suggested bundles of some of the meeting room products based on whether these are kind of meet and present or meet and collaborate type scenarios, whether we're talking about a small huddle space for a couple of people or a large meeting room or even an auditorium setting. We've put through a couple of examples, but really the beauty about all of these products is how modular they are. So what we can do is we can work with you on a case-by-case basis, and we can bring Tom and his colleagues onto the call to say, okay, well, let's look at we've just done it in our own building here. We took some physical measurements of some of our meeting rooms, and we worked out how many repeating microphones we might need hidden in the ceiling or across the meeting room table. Do we need 2 panels so that we can really share a PowerPoint on one slide and still see the half a dozen people remotely on the cameras, that kind of thing. So we'll present a couple of sort of bundled options for you in the brochure that we're going to share, but the message really is to sort of give us a call, have a chat with us, because every situation is different, and I think every office space is different, and we're all thinking about that. We're back in our office. I'm back in my office today. I'm sat in, I have the luxury of my own office within our building, but I'm currently only in 2 days a week. So for 3 days a week, this has now become a huddle space. It's become a meeting room, and how do my colleagues join when they walk into the room to make sure that we're getting kind of maximum efficiency out of the sort of the square footage of the building, and these are important considerations. How do you deal with the team needing to make calls by Teams in the main office area? Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. It is that thing, and now we're not all in our private workspaces at home. It's that sort of how do you join a team in the office, and I think that can be as simple as the headset that Mo's wearing today. I think increasingly as well, though, it's looking at this, at the use of your office and the use of those kind of dedicated huddle spaces. One of the things I've noticed here is some people are quite happy to sit on at their desk with a headset on, and really that's no different to being on a phone call probably pre-lockdown. But I have also noticed some people find that a little bit more, they feel a little bit more spotlighted in the office, I think, when they join a Teams call. And we are seeing people leave their desk and going and sitting in our waiting room or one of our little huddle zones that we've got. So I think that's changing. Mo, do you have anything to add to that question?
Yeah, I mean, Teams is available across multiple platforms and multiple scenarios, whether you're using Teams for PSTN, so using them for phone calls, or Teams Rooms devices absolutely can handle that as well. So, you know, the devices that were presented today can absolutely handle just normal PSTN calls if you're using Teams as your kind of go-to telco platform. Again, it's just based on scenario. So I would highly recommend, Shilpa, if you reach out to Dan and the team, let's take a deeper dive in terms of what the needs are, and I'm really confident we can pull something together for you.
Thanks, Mo.
I think, Rob, if you're using a headset in the open office, it must have noise cancellation mic. Yes, absolutely. So the advantage is, one of the new things we've added onto Microsoft Teams is noise suppression, which comes as default. It's under the settings, and you may already have it today, which automatically will block out noise that hits out the back. And then a lot of our OEM partners with their headsets also have inbuilt noise cancellation. So whether you've got a inbuilt hardware, that's the advantage. Even if you don't, Teams will try and block out any additional noise in the background. But some great questions coming in. Feel free to reach out to the Ramsack team. We'll be more than happy to try and answer them for you.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Mo. Thanks, Tom, once again. We'll make sure we send a recording of this call out to everybody later on today, and I'll grab a copy of the slide deck. There were a couple of requests for that as well, with several other resources that we'll plan to share later on today. But thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you all.